are here with David Goodman, executive producer and writer on the Orville. And I'm going to just put it out there, full disclosure, that this is not the first time we've had a conversation, because I know it's going to come up. So we actually...
I wasn't going to bring it up.
I wasn't either, Rob. So
I'm just a full transparency type of guy. So we had a conversation last year that due to tech issues, we unfortunately lost. But in the meantime, there was a positive side to it because, one, we got to wait until Digressions and Artifacts came out, and we've read that, and I can't wait to talk about those. And also, you gave us some homework, which was to watch Forbidden Planet, and I absolutely did. And now I have even more questions now that I've like gone back, because I watched it only like a month or two after we last talked to you. And I just revisited some of the stuff, and I'm seeing, I think, more connections than even in the show.
Katie didn't watch it. She didn't.
Did you tell by my face that I was like, quiet, "Oh yeah,
quiet." Please, teacher, don't call on me. I didn't read it.
I didn't watch it yet, but I will watch it. It's on my list of things to do.
There's some stuff about that movie too that I didn't realize, like it being the first movie to take place completely on an alien planet and have like no parts take place on Earth at all. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was a lot. There's a lot of stuff that got stolen by not just Roddenberry, but also Lost in Space, the original television series.
Oh, totally.
They stole the production designer. Erwin Allen, the producer of Lost in Space, stole the entire design, interior designs of the ship, the robot, all that stuff. He just like stole it.
Yeah,
it was kind of remarkable.
It was a very interesting movie to watch too, because the pacing is so different than modern movies and TV.
A little languid.
Yeah, and it felt like an episode of a TV show and not necessarily a movie. It
really did. It really did, and it didn't help that a lot of those actors were real television actors, like Leslie Nielsen and Anne Francis. I mean, these were not big movie stars. Walter Pidgeon was, but everybody else was really people who would be known for their work, a lot of work in television.
Yeah. So I know we'll get back to Forbidden Planet stuff as it comes up, but we do want to talk Orville things too, for sure. So if we kind of rewind back towards the beginning of everything, when was the first time that the Orville was presented to you as an idea, or were you a part of the genesis of that?
Seth and I talked. It's Seth MacFarlane and I've worked with Seth for a long time. It's going on 20 years at this point, I think, even longer. The third season of Family Guy, I started working with him, and we were always really interested in, we shared interest in Star Trek and science fiction television. And he and I were talking, and he was, throwing around this idea, and then he writes the script and turns it in, and they pick it up for 13, and in a very short amount of time. I mean, but it was something that Fox wanted to do. But he, all the way through, talked to me about it, and we threw around ideas about it. And then, I was there as close to the beginning as anybody. And then he wrote the second script on his own. It's The Stars Shall Appear was actually the second episode written for the show.
Okay.
And he showed that to me, and I gave him some thoughts, and then I was part of the writer's room right from the beginning.
Now, there's always comparisons to Orville from Star Trek. I mean, Katie and I are big Trekkies as well. I mean, I'm wearing a Star Trek t-shirt and everything. Yeah. Do the nonstop comparisons to Star Trek become obnoxious at some point, or is it like a compliment that you'll hear fans say their favorite modern Trek show is the Orville right now?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly heard that. I mean, to me, I mean, there's obviously comparisons to make. I think that the Star Trek popularized the idea of a television show on a spaceship that had kind of a military feel, of people in uniforms carrying guns, but also telling these sort of metaphors for modern life, and that's something that Roddenberry popularized, and other shows have used. And we're using it too, but Seth has his own sort of take on it. I certainly don't take it as an insult that somebody says it's the best Star Trek on the air. I think I think that what's so interesting to me that sort of always gets lost in the conversation about the Trek fans, and there's the rabid groups like the three of us, and then but the fact is Star Trek was an enormously popular television show for the world. It's not all the people who enjoyed Star Trek were not necessarily rabid Trek fans, and that's what I think Orville has too. Is that Orville is a show that has its rabid fan base, but then also it's a show anybody can watch, and that to me is kind of what makes it special. Is that we're not so lost in our own canon and the details of our universe that somebody can't turn on an episode and figure out what's going on and enjoy it and hopefully laugh at it, be moved by it, whatever.
Very true.
I mean, we're all self-proclaimed rabid Star Trek fans. I saw that you worked on Star Trek Enterprise, and that kind of led into working on the Orville a bit. I was curious if it's like a dream come true of sorts to get to work on something that you love and that so many other people love, like the fact that you get to work on something that you are a fan of.
Oh yeah, Katie. I mean, I'll always remember like when I've been a Star Trek fan since I was in junior high school. And so that day that, I got the job on Enterprise. I had this job interview with Brian and Braga and a couple of the other writers. And it went well. And then finally then I had a meeting with Rick Berman and that went well. And then I got the job offer. And so I'm driving into the gates of Paramount for my first day of work. And I have to call into Brandon's office to just make sure that the pass was there. Where do I park? And so I'm on the phone. He's like, and the assistant was giving me the information. And then he says, "Oh, and David, welcome to Star Trek." And, that moment's still a very memorable moment. And the great piece of that story is that assistant was Terry Metalis, who is now running Picard.
Wow.
Wow.
And Terry was also like, he was saying that to me. We didn't know each other at all, but he knew what a big fan I was. He was a giant fan. That's why he was working there. And, that idea that you can get to play a part in those things that you've been watching and reading about since childhood and actually contribute and be a part of that it's incredibly gratifying.
I was also thinking like reading the comics and then also obviously watching the show. What is it like seeing your ideas on paper and then seeing them brought to life in, obviously with sci-fi alone, but just in general?
Yeah, no, that's obviously, for creative people who want to have a creative career, and the idea that you would get to see these things to fruition, it is really gratifying. It can be frustrating too, in that these are all collaborative efforts, and it's never exactly not always exactly what you want. But in the case of the Orville, I really did get to work on something from the beginning that I made some big contributions to, and then the comic. I'd always wanted to write comics, so the Orville gave me this opportunity to write comics, and that has just been just start to finish, just a great, wonderful experience. I love the artists involved, David Cabeza and the other artists involved, and that I'm writing these scripts that in a very detailed way lay out what happens, and I'm pretty much I'm the only writer of the comics. I've run ideas by Seth, but he's never ever said don't do that. He's always like, "Oh yeah, that sounds good," and so that's a very exciting thing to see your things sort of brought to life, brought to fruition. I think what's great in the computer age is that people just starting out can do that on their own. I mean, they can do comics online, they can do movies and special effects. It's kind of amazing what's
It really
available
is.
to people, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's nice to get paid for it too. So.
Yeah, that is true. It's always a special touch. I also love that the tone of the Orville is dramatic and lighthearted. So there's
Right.
both veins in storylines. Do you find that it's easier to write dramatic or more light, humorous storylines?
Well, for the most part now, Orville is drama. It's drama with a light touch. The show started out maybe with a little more focus on the comedy, and that was something Seth talked about, that's really where he lived and where his confidence was. But as sort of time went on, he realized that the fans didn't need the hard jokes, and he didn't want to be doing that. And so we went away from that. There's still plenty of character comedy in the show, and I think that to me, I've never really written a very heavy drama like Law and Order SVU or Homeland, or these are all great shows that I've enjoyed, but I've never personally written that. I've always, most of my resume is in comedy or if in the sci-fi genre. I mean, Star Trek Enterprise was not full heavy drama. There was sort of the sci-fi element and a lightness to the character relationships. So for me, it's that's what I do. I don't know. I don't know. I think about the people who write that really dark stuff, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I have to make a joke at some point.
I think that serves too as a better entry point. Like, if I want someone to watch Star Trek now, I almost feel like I'd make them watch the Orville first, because I could be like, this goes down a little easier.
That's interesting. I've watched some of the new shows, the new Star Trek shows, and I think that they're amazing looking and great cast and very well written. But I do wonder about that. I'm a Star Trek fan, so I understand the context of everything. I always wondered if a new fan, but they keep making more of them, so that must be the case.
It must be.
So, yeah.
It must be doing well if they keep pumping them out. So and
Yes,
I'm happy about that.
Right.
Yeah. From a fan's perspective, it makes me so happy to see like the Orville and Star Trek kind of coming back into the
absolutely.
fold.
It's very exciting that you can watch a new episode of a sci-fi show whenever you want. There's always something new. So
is there, in the writing room, is there a mood or anything that the writers all do to get into the mood or the groove into writing a script?
You mean like music and drinks? What do you like?
I don't know. Like, is there just like a rhythm to it or anything special, like a routine?
The schedule dictates the mood. We got to get this done. We need, you're always thinking about the schedule. You got to get the scripts written so that they can get shot. And then you're also thinking about what have you done before. So an idea might come up that you then dismiss because it's too similar to something you've already done. Or you come up with an idea that then is a continuation of something you've done. You realize, oh, this builds on what we've done. But it's really that. It's really, you have a job to do. You've got to get this work done.
And I also know you've done a lot of different jobs. You've worn a lot of different hats in this industry, from acting to voice work to writing to producing. Is it difficult to switch from one thing to the other?
I'm not an actor, Katie.
I know, but I saw that you had done a couple things.
I'm not an actor. I've done voices in a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because I sound like Ray Romano. So Seth does a Ray Romano gag. He casts me as Ray Romano. Or I'll pitch a joke and it sounds funny coming out of my mouth. So Seth will say, "Oh yeah, let David do that." I played a Star Trek nerd on a Family Guy episode. That wasn't a stretch, really. And the producing and the other things all come out of being a writer. The producing things that I'm involved with have to do with the fact that I'm one of the writers involved in the show.
And you also helped develop the characters of the Krill for the show. So I'm glad we're having this conversation again because things have illuminated somewhat
all right.
between the homework and between the last time we talked and now. I actually did a complete rewatch of Deep Space Nine. I hadn't
Oh, wow.
since like I had first watched it. I'm assuming the name is a take on the Krell from Forbidden Planet.
It's not actually. Seth came up with the name Krill, and he's not this giant Forbidden Planet fan. I'm not sure he's ever seen. I'm not sure he's ever seen it.
Wow. We'll give him homework.
Yeah. So, no, I was making you guys do homework.
Yeah.
I can't make him do homework. And Kitty didn't do the homework.
I was gonna say it makes me feel a little better, but still, I'll do it. I promise.
I don't care. After this, we may never speak again. No, I don't think so. I don't know actually where Seth got the name.
Okay.
He mentioned it. He wrote the pilot script, and they're in the pilot. He and I had talked at length about this sort of alien species whose Bible dictated everything for them, and that anybody who wasn't in their Bible wasn't worth living. And that was really sort of where the idea started, was based on sort of fundamentalist religions.
Okay.
And this idea of a fundamentalist religion in outer space. And that was the beginning starting point. As time's gone on, we've filled it in with a little more than that, but that's really where it started. And in the first season episode that I wrote, Krill, that was like us deciding at that moment, okay, let's try to fill these people in. Let's try to fill this world in. And it took us down a great road with Talea and life on that ship, and that also was John Cassar's first episode as a director. So
that's right.
So that first episode of the Orville as a director, and led to his long relationship with the show.
Yeah, at first I thought the Krill were kind of an amalgamation of like Romulan and Klingon, but after watching Deep Space Nine, I'm seeing a large connection to the Jem'Hadar, both aesthetically and in their like worshiping of this god in the way that the Jem'Hadar did the Founders, kind of unquestioningly.
That's interesting. Yeah, there is definitely, there is a physical similarity to the Jem'Hadar. Again, I don't know that Seth was in those decisions of making those aesthetic choices. I think it was more lizard look than Jem'Hadar. That was what was sort of guiding it. And but the thing with the Founders, and it's different because for us, it's this idea that this society is just a deeply religious society, and is guided by its religion and its fundamentalist religion, and so that was more of where we were going with the Krill.
Speaking of their religion, the name Avis as their god was that chosen for the abundance of jokes that would result from it, or did that come from some other place?
It's funny. I don't remember when we came up with that, but it did give us a lot of jokes.
It is ripe with them.
It wasn't,
for sure.
I don't think it was. I don't think so. I think we came up with the name first, and then realized all the jokes we could get from it.
Oh wow!
So I grew up and watched Star Trek with my dad. It's like one of my favorite memories from being a kid, and I always loved. Now, as an adult, I appreciate it more, the philosophy that's kind of weaved into every episode. And it got me thinking about certain episodes in the Orville, such as Deflectors. And from a writing perspective, is it difficult to tackle those more difficult topics?
Well, you definitely take some care. Like you definitely want to understand issues having to do with if you're going to take on an issue that has to do with sexuality, as that episode did, you want to be careful. You want to be thoughtful. You want make sure that you're not just saying thing that isn't true to the people who struggle with these things. And so that's more of like what it is. It takes some care. You're not just, but that's the way it is. I think with all our episodes is that you want the audience to understand that you really took some care in how you approach this, and that was I really love that episode, but it is a way in which that episode probably took more care than the season finale where I wrote The Road Not Taken, which was more sort of this, full on like space epic story. Deflectors was more internal, had a real sort of character conflict and talking about the society. And so, I guess I would answer it is harder because you want to take some more care with it.
Yeah. That was one of the things that, Rob, I enjoyed doing this show with you, is that we get to like marinate in it and talk about it. And
right.
I just appreciate that the show tackles things that's
Right.
more than just surface level.
Yeah.
I've noticed too that in a lot of those type of heavy internal episodes, the show doesn't tell you the perspective that you're supposed to come away with. It asks the question
Right.
and then just lets you kind of, like Katie said, marinate in it yourself. Is that very purposeful?
Yeah. And, it's interesting too. Like you talk about, again, like the fundamentalist episodes of, we're talking about the krill being this fundamentalist species. Some people say, oh, they're going after Christians, and others say, oh, they're going after Muslims, or oh, they're going after Jews, or that, and that. Then we've succeeded. Everybody's sort of seeing it however they want to see it, but we're not picking a aside other than we don't like fundamentalist religion in any context. So we're landing there, but we're not taking on any one religion, any one nationality, anything like that. So that, yes, the idea is sort of, it's food for thought, is like, is how we look at it. We don't, Seth has some strong point of views about religion and the importance of science. And there are some of them are maybe connected to politics, but in general, the show it isn't going to fall on some superficial political side. It's going to try to just present the issues. There's always a point of view. The acceptance is always that's always our point of view. Acceptance. And so to me, some people are not accepting. So then they would disagree with us. Everybody else thinks they're accepting. So
that makes sense. Speaking of The Road Not Taken, which you brought up, there are some heavy references in that to Star Wars. Was there a conscious decision that when you're doing an alternate timeline?
Well, what references? What are you talking about?
So, okay. Oh man, I got to wrap my brain around them again. All right. So there is, for one, the attire and the kind of general aesthetic of it feels a lot more rebel than like clean Federation or Union. There is a moment in is it 54, the station they go visit, and there's a little thing that pops out of the door, just like the Jabba's palace. Yeah. There we go.
That might have been intentional.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was with an alternate timeline story, because the aesthetic becomes so different. It's like, well, let's kind of take some cues from the other quote unquote big sci-fi franchise.
I think that's interesting. I think there are other Star Wars references throughout Orville too. Totally. I don't think that there are like, some of our music might sound like it. And, it's not a clean thing of, okay, we do Star Trek every week, now we're going to do Star Wars. I mean, we're influenced by The Twilight Zone, we're influenced by Black Mirror, we're influenced by all the things that are out there. We're influenced by science fiction we've read. It all gets thrown in the pot. I think that there was a sort of a bang up nature to that episode that made it feel more like Star Wars in some ways. I mean, just because there were so many dogfights, so many chases, so much special effects in that episode, that I think that it had almost a more Star Wars feel to it. But it wasn't an effort to make more Star Wars references, although the effort sticking his head out, I'd be lying if I didn't say that was influenced by.
It's probably the big one that stuck out to me for sure.
Yeah.
There's also in that episode, which fans were very happy to see, was the return of Halston Sage as Alara Katan.
Yeah.
Was that appearance something that you wrote in hoping that Halston would return, or had she expressed interest prior and then the cameo came?
Well, Halston's she's a friend of ours. I mean, she didn't leave under bad circumstances. She left, and she was in communication with someone. It might have been Seth, and said who asked her, "Do you want to come back just for one episode?" She said, "Absolutely." And I think she might have even said that when she left. It's like, "I'm happy to come back." So it wasn't like it was. I wouldn't have written it in the script if we weren't, because the thing really sort of turns on her, and we have that stuff between her and John, so that's not gonna. We're not gonna do that unless we know she's gonna do it. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of the comic, I was shocked, but also very pleased when I saw the kiss between John and Alara in Digressions.
Well, so you were shocked, but we reference that something had gone on between the two of them?
But I think just because it's never happened, it satisfied a part of my soul when I saw it.
All right, satisfied. Okay, so it was shocked in a good way.
Yeah, shocked in a good way. Like I didn't expect it when I turned the page.
Yeah, we talked about how it's very suggested in the episode, but since we never saw it, there's no like official confirmation of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when the comic does that, we were like, hey.
Yeah. It was official.
Well, those two comics, I mean, the Digressions, it was a real exercise in trying to find the connective tissue between the two episodes, because none of that, we'd come up with none of that was in the comic. It was all me trying to trying to fill in the blanks, because we broke the way Road Not Taken got broken was we were actually working on the story for tomorrow, and we couldn't figure out the ending. Like that episode was similar in some ways to Second Chances, this Next Generation episode where the other version of Riker comes back, and they had that great ending in that episode where he stays around and he goes off and lives his whole life in the Federation, and then it shows up in Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
And we knew we didn't want to do that just because that's the same ending. And we were doing our own thing with the episode, and I suggested, why doesn't she go back and change history? And then I started to realize that, if she doesn't go out with Ed doesn't get the Orville, Claire doesn't end up on the Orville, Claire's kids don't end up on the Orville, and Isaac doesn't turn, and the Kaelon take over. And that all happened in the writer's room. I remember being very excited that wait, I have to get the whole thing out. And I could see sort of Seth like nodding and his eyes widening and realizing, this is a great way to do, our version now of like a show like Yesterday's Enterprise, which was one of my favorite Next Gen, the alternate bad timeline. But like what I've said before, which I think is interesting, is in Yesterday's Enterprise and Next Generation, the history turned over the fact that the Enterprise C didn't get to try to rescue Narendra 3. In our universe, the history changes because Ed didn't get laid. And so that's the difference between the Orville and Star Trek right there. But anyway, so that's how that episode came about, and we started working out the story. And we want Kelly on the ship with with the rest of the crew, and they're together, and we never explain how they got together. We didn't even think about it. We didn't even think, what have Ed and Gordon been doing for the 6 months that the Kalon have been taking over the galaxy? And then, we had the dialogue of that Ed had never gotten a ship, that he's running the Eridani Epsilon outpost. And then everything else I had to make up, but I was trying to be really careful to connect it in a way that made sense. So it really was kind of this thing that I hobbled together to connect the two episodes. But I was happy with how it came out.
It came out great. Did you have to make like a flow chart that you had in front of you while you were writing it?
I was outlining it, so in a certain way, and as I was outlining it, I was having a lot of thoughts. There's actually something in there. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not even going to hint at it. But that was affected by something that's in season 3.
Oh,
and there's like something happens at a certain point, and it's small. And it's like somebody might question, well, why didn't that could have happened at any point, and it's happening because of like, oh shit, I can't do that here. It's because of anyway. There's no time. It's not a time travel thing. It's just that it's something that we introduced in season 3 that affected this.
Okay.
And so it really was this kind of complicated thing of just trying to make sure that it was really taking a lot of care. And if I told you what that thing was, you'd be like, I don't think you had to worry about that. I don't think anybody would care. And so for instance, like figuring out exactly, I really did have to look at like the order of the episode. When did everything happen? And I had to figure out, when could Ed have been on a ship, because I wanted to show him on a ship with that other captain, but then he's got to get the job on the space station. So figuring all that stuff out, it wasn't a flowchart, but it took a while. And I wanted
because you're revisiting a lot of those episodes and
right.
those little key moments that we saw, and there's just like an alternate timeline goes, there's just that twist.
Yes, right. Oh, and Cassius was bringing Cassius back. I wanted to bring him back. I like that guy. I thought he was a really good actor.
He was great. I love him too.
Character, and the fact that he's a good husband to Kelly, that he believes her, all that I thought would be fun things, and it gave me somebody to kill.
Yeah, that was rough.
Were you emotionally affected by that?
I was. I had emotional damage from that one.
Well, then I succeeded. No, I mean, I wanted like that. Again, we sort of see Kelly when on that ship, and that idea that like, the idea that like she's lost her husband was, I thought, really added a level that you could still see in Adrienne. She didn't have that when she did the episode, but you could sort of see in Adrienne's performance, she was really like, dark, and that she's really, lost things because of, because she changed the past.
That's one of the things I like about the comics, is that they feel like episodes in between the actual episodes that I can read. I'm curious, what was the catalyst for the comic being created? What was the spark that got it going?
I said, Seth, we have to do comics. And he said, yes, go ahead.
That's amazing.
He said, and it was really me sort of taking advantage of the situation that I had, which was, I used to read Star Trek comics. I was always really disappointed in them. Star Trek comics that came out in the 70s and 80s, I found to be really disappointing. And so I sort of started from that place of like, what do I want these comics to be? And then, the studio, licensed it to Dark Horse. They went to a bunch of companies. I think Dark Horse was actually the only one that was interested. And they do a lot of tie-in comics. They do like Stranger Things and a couple of other things. And so they were into it, and they were obviously happy to have one of the writers of the show doing it. And we did a sort of a tryout. I wrote a scene as a comic book scene. It was actually a scene from Krill. It was that opening scene on the bridge where they're approaching the Krill battleship, and I wrote it as a comic book, like in comic book format, and we gave it to, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 artists who then had to draw it. So it was like an audition. And in my mind, David Cabeza nailed it right away. But I gave them all to Seth. It was actually, we were shooting, and I go to him in Video Village, and in between shots, I say, "Hey, take a look at these artists. We got to pick one for the comic." And he's like, "It's this guy, right?" I mean, it was like so obvious. So David is such a talented artist, and sort of capturing the look of our actors and the ships. I mean, it's a beautiful comic from his, his art. And but anyway, so then it was just me writing stories, and I appreciate you saying they feel like episodes, because that's what I always wanted. I wanted that feeling that I never got from Star Trek comics. And I think it's a subtle thing, but I think the thing that I do that probably does make it feel like a TV show is I don't have thought balloons.
Yeah.
It's all dialogue and action. And I don't have too many captions or stage direction filling things in. As a result, the stories have to be really lean, because you can't move ahead in time too much without those extra additions. And you can't, but I do think that my reliance on, like, I need dialogue to tell this story, a dialogue and visuals to tell this story, makes it as close as you can get to feeling like television. Now, that there would be comic book creators who would say, well, then you're not really doing a service to the comic book venue. And they're right. This the purpose of this comic is as an addition to the TV show. It doesn't exist on its own. And I think that's okay. I that's purposeful. They're much better. I mean, there are much better comics out there. I'm not like people who really push the boundaries of the format, but this to me was always supposed to be some more Orville episodes. That's the way I always sort of looked at it.
So I've seen what TV scripts look like, but I can't say I've ever seen a script for a comic book. So I'm not really sure what, like, the format of that all is. But when you are writing, how specific do you have to be about things like visuals?
You make a choice. So there are comic book writers who sort of are very general and leave it up to the artist to figure out, like, how to lay out the page. And then there's the way that I do it for this comic, which is I'm almost directing every shot. But David is a very talented artist, and if he comes back to me and says, "This doesn't quite work, how about this?" I'm very open and collaborative with him. But in general, I'm very specific about, I have a comic right here with me.
Nice.
I brought them with me. I just this flashback sequence from Digressions. I said there would be, I figured out what was going to be in each panel. I figured out what the camera angle was going to be. I wrote what their dialogue is, or in this case, this is a voiceover, and how many panels would be on the page.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes, sometimes, like in this, I didn't say the exact layout of these panels, for instance. David figured that out based on the number of panels that I wanted and the number of shots I wanted. And so he'll be placing them in a certain way. And then I'm really not, at this point, not giving David too much direction on the expressions. He gets it from context about how people should look, and he adds his own really spin on that too. So it was a great partnership.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about the comics is we learn a lot about the characters from the show in more detail, but we also get new characters and new alien races. Are there any that you've written that you'd like to see on the show at some point?
Well, I'm pretty clear in all the cases of these are characters we couldn't do. There's the one planet where they go to where it's them basically in makeup. I forgot the name of that one, but in general, like the aliens that I have, the
kind of bird-like looking ones, right?
These over here.
Yeah.
Yep. I wanted in this first comic to have an alien race that we're never going to do anything like this. We'll never be able to pull it off. It's also cute. It's like almost too cute for the television show. And I felt like comics, it's okay to do something cute. Chalmy, his race in the last comic that I did, same thing. I wanted something like we would never do this. So I wanted the comics to have their own races, things that I wanted a reason for it to be in the comic.
Yeah, that's something we have speculated on a little bit when we had our discussions, is when races like that came up, we were like, oh, this is so cool. This would be so expensive.
It's so hard to do for a show.
Yeah. But it's nice
it was
that you have the
intentional on
option.
my part. Was
Okay.
like, if we're going to do a comic, that you're going to do some aliens that maybe you would never see in real life. And also that gives you a reason that the comic has its own specialness.
You mentioned Chalmy too. When you have a character like that, is there a full description you write, or do you kind of just let David run wild with like a bunch of ideas of what that might be?
No, I really wanted that Chalmy's race is an homage to Forbidden Planet.
Race? Really?
So do you remember and Katie, you're not going to know.
Yeah, I'm just going to sit here quietly.
Race or
a long extinct race? Like we never really see it in Forbidden Planet, except in he mentions the architecture of the Dr. Morbius mentions the architecture. So there's sort of a squat architecture, and then the monster from the id that we see in the force field.
Okay.
It's 2 legs, and it's this big. So I think I gave Dave that as a reference, but that I wanted a sweet version of that. So it was like because we don't know what the Krill looked like. I was making sort of assumptions, and I wanted this sort of squat thing on 2 feet. We added the cute face, which and then it was furry. That these were elements, but it was sort of a visual homage to the Krill, because there is sort of in that story a connection to that, an homage to that movie as well, like the idea of he's controlling things with his mind. Like that was the other thing I was going to ask about, is that if Chalmy's doing that with the subconscious control, and then Morbius is doing it with the machine, it's the same idea there. It's the same idea, although I went further and said that it was a genetic thing, that it wasn't the power of their mind, which is the idea, the sci-fi idea of Forbidden Planet. In this, it's genetics. It's like that these machines have been genetically programmed. Well, the machines have been programmed to respond to the right genetically appropriate race.
Okay.
So it's different, but there was definitely sort of an homage to it.
Cool. When you're writing all these stories, and we talked about how much they are very much like episodes that we didn't get to see on TV, do you ever bump into one where you go, I should save that for television because that would just work better over there, or for any reason?
No, I mean, usually what happens is, so for instance, in fact, these are ideas that I've had sitting, a couple of them are ideas I've had sitting around.
Okay.
Because they never made it on television. So for instance, when I worked at Star Trek Enterprise, I pitched, in the 3rd season, I pitched 2 stories. One ended up being the episode North Star, where they're on the Western planet. The other was basically the episode that is New Beginnings, is the crashed ship that destroyed the planet, and that then that is going to shoot down
Okay.
Enterprise unless they can shut. The whole thing was I pitched that idea. Brannon liked that idea, but Rick felt it was too Rick Berman felt it was too similar to some aspects of the Star Trek Voyager pilot. Which I didn't make that connection. And so I always had that idea. I always loved the idea of this wrecked ancient ship that is providing food and life to this aliens whose planet it destroyed. I thought that was really cool. Tala becoming a superhero was something we talked about in the writer's room, actually, for Alara in season 1. It was never an idea that Seth took to, so I kind of knew we were never going to do it. And I'm a big Zorro fan, so the idea of her being a flying Zorro I thought was great, and she loved it. Jessica, who was just over the moon over getting to be a comic book Zorro, but
she bummed it all. She didn't get to wear the costume.
Yeah, I think she would. But so that piece of it. So it's more about like there's some unused ideas.
Okay.
That I've gotten to use, but no, I've never really come up with anything that I thought would be something we do on the show. And I don't know why. I don't know how I know that, but I just feel like, no, these are comic book stories. They're not going to be something we'd ever use.
Okay. Since you brought up Jessica and Tala, between Heroes and the episode Deflectors, you've probably done the most work in fleshing out her character since she's shown up. Is that coincidental? Is there something special about her character to you?
Oh, that's probably just coincidental. I think that Deflectors seemed like a natural episode to involve her as we were developing the idea. And it was like, oh, this really goes with her character. But I think that, I haven't, even though I wrote that script, I haven't contributed more to Tala's character than any of the other writers on the staff. We all work together. So anything that's in my script is really reflective of conversations that we've had. That backstory, I do love the backstory of her being on the ship and the sort of the idea of these aliens that are somehow connected to the Talayans. I thought was really cool and fun. And her being this sort of hero was a blast. But no, I don't think I've contributed any more to Tala than anybody else. Certainly Seth, again, it starts with Seth and it's really his character.
I know you listened to our discussion of digressions and artifacts, and you had mentioned that we might have missed some Easter eggs. I was wondering if there were any that we missed that you might be able to share with us.
No, you guys missed a lot.
Yeah. There's probably so many in there. We'd have to spend hours on it.
Did you guys talk about like Captain Mosley? Who the
Sigourney Weaver, right?
No, that's Captain Barrett.
That's Barrett. Okay, Mosley. No, I don't think we did.
You didn't notice. You didn't notice that he might have looked like Yaphet Kotto.
I don't know who that is.
He was an alien with Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, I know.
I think I've seen it like
now.
once. So
you only seen an alien once.
Yeah.
Well, so you missed that Easter egg. You missed also their names. Barrett and Mosley are. I'm just going to make you look them up later. Are references to other roles that they've played.
That's fair.
So those were. I'm not saying that the looks legally. I'm not saying the looks are.
Oh, of course.
Based on those
of course
never.
Not. No.
But I think that there's a lot of like faces in there. It was interesting that. But here, wait. I want to pull it up. What is it? You did catch LaMarche, which was named after Maurice LaMarche.
It was.
Yes.
Oh man, I love that guy so much.
Who I worked with on Futurama. so the guy who's his professor didn't look familiar to you.
He did, but I could not place the face.
Well, I added
It's
a
gonna kill
mustache
me.
so he would look less like him, but
It was kind of killing me the whole book. I was like, this looks like somebody, and I can't think of it.
well, so there's a I mean, I guess what I'd say is that there's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation that involves one of Picard's old teachers coming back. So so he was a bit of an homage to that. An actor named Norman Lloyd. And I was doing a bit of a riff on that, but he's passed away, so I guess I'm okay using his. And my story is different than that episode, although it did involve an ancient race. But I make my guy a complete asshole.
Yeah.
Which you guys pointed out on the podcast. He's very sketchy all the way through. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Well, you guys didn't mention that this was Onyx from our bartender. Like, I felt like you guys didn't get that the.
Oh yeah. I didn't know that it needed to be said.
All right. I was like, wait, did they not know that was Onyx?
Oh, totally.
There's an Easter egg that nobody's going to get. Captain Griffith. This bearded guy.
Yeah.
He's based on Howard Griffith, who's our producer on the guy who handles all the physical production. Seth named the character after him, so I just had the artist draw him. He was thrilled. But like the doctor, I don't think Cabeza quite captured the actor, but I sort of had based him on Dr. Boyce from the original Star Trek pilot.
Oh wow.
There's a few other things in there too. I'm just thinking. Now you want to know whether I'm referencing Star Wars. If you go to,
You have the quote in there, right?
Which quote?
I think that's one we talked about. I have a bad feeling about this.
That's in there, but there's also something that's even more, really more of a deep dive. So this scene with Gordon and Ed, where Gordon said, Kaelon troops have entered the base. Kaelon troops have entered the base. That's it. Let's go. He says, come on. That's it.
Yeah.
Let's go. So if you watch it, Empire Strikes Back.
This is going to be super specific, isn't it?
If you watch The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Han goes to get Leia. She's still in the command center and it's wrecked.
Yeah.
And you hear this announcements, Interior troops have entered the base. Imperial troops.
Oh my God.
And then he grabs her and says, come on, let's go. So that was a reference to that.
That's
There's
fantastic.
a lot of that stuff in here I could probably, but.
And that's just all living rent free up there? Or
That's living rent free. Yeah.
There you go.
Using up my space.
That's a lot of detail, though.
It really is.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to get it. So I don't know, but it adds a nice little emotion, like Gordon said, come on, that's it. You've done enough kind of thing. So, yeah. There's probably some more stuff too like that, but, and then, I mean, I think you guys mentioned it in Artifacts, risk is our business. Did you guys mention that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was me really going to the edge. That was inspired by a question we got at Comic-Con where somebody had referenced the episode where they're watching Seinfeld at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And the person in the audience said, so if Seinfeld exists in this universe, does that mean Star Trek exists in this universe? And Seth said, please have security, please remove that. But I thought, all right, let's go right to the edge. I don't actually say it, but I go right to the edge. So,
and I just have a question for my own curiosity, because there were some alien references in comic.
That's right.
Are you a big sci-fi horror fan?
I've certainly seen some.
Yeah.
Is there something you wanted to like?
I'm just curious if you were like a fan of like Alien, Event Horizon, like those kinds of movies. Or
I've seen them all. I'm a giant sci-fi geek. pretty much any movie that has a spaceship in it, I will watch.
Yeah, I respect that.
And it's hard to remember that most of my, I'm not young, and most of my youth, there wasn't a lot. There really wasn't a lot. There were Star Trek reruns, there was Lost in Space reruns, and then there were whatever 50s science fiction movies there were that involved the spaceship. And then Star Wars comes out in 1977 and changes everything. But up to that point, there really 2001, which for me as a kid was too slow. Well, I very much appreciate it now, but I didn't then. So that idea of like, up from when I was born in the early 60s to 1977, I made sure to see anything that involved the spaceship, Flash Gordon serials, like anything.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't much.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, with horror, I like horror a lot, and like I love sci-fi horror, so I can't like Sunshine, any of those movies. I'm like, oh, it takes place in space. I'd like to see where this goes.
Sunshine's great. Sunshine's a great movie. Oh yeah. Alien was is to me, Alien, created a whole subgenre of science fiction, of sort of working class science fiction, people who are like working for a living in space. We didn't have that. It existed in the literature, but it never had been in movies, and now it led to a whole other movie genre of guys and women doing hard labor in outer space.
Good point.
Yeah. I do have some fun questions.
Oh yeah, all right.
I also want to know, I feel like most people have a Star Trek captain. I grew up with Next Gen, so Picard is very much my captain.
Right.
But do you have a captain?
Yeah, it's got to be Kirk.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up Star Trek. I also I also wrote the autobiography of James C. Kirk. You guys know I wrote that, and the autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard. But like Kirk to me was, that's the show I got into as a kid and watched religiously. I mean, I love Next Gen; it's a great show. But the Kirk, fisticuffs, seducing alien woman guy, that's cool.
Yeah. James Bond in space.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of wild that pretty soon we're going to have a third actor playing that role.
It's so amazing. I mean, I love JJ's first movie. I thought that was a great movie, and it was great to see the reinvention of those characters. I am frustrated as a Star Trek fan that we're still stuck in prequel land there. I was like, yeah, that's because I'm so into that canon that it's like you're so confined, but the audience doesn't know, and so it'll be. But it'll be fascinating to see somebody else play that character. I mean, it's I hope I'll be interested to see what ship he's on and all that stuff. So, yeah. But I thought Chris Pine did a great job. I loved
fantastic.
Him. Loved him as Kirk. I thought he was great. Yeah.
If you were a part of the crew of the Orville, what would be your dream role on the ship?
Is that a fun question, Katie? I don't know.
I think it's fun. Like, would you want to fly the ship or actually be in command? It'd probably be pretty stressful to work on the Orville. I
think it would be really stressful. I think that like historians sit in my room called out every once in a while. I got to go to a planet. I mean, like, I always thought that on the original Star Trek there was that historian character who ended up with Khan, and they got a historian on the ship.
Yeah,
that seems like a good job.
Yeah.
Work with the dolphins and cetacean ops,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
My last question is, how do you find time to do all of this?
What exactly am I doing, Katie? I'm even talking to you. Do I have time? I have time. Okay.
Yeah, no, I know, but you do a lot of you do a lot of things, and it's really neat to see. Like, you write books, you write scripts for shows, and you do a lot.
That's I think that. I mean, having a mortgage helps.
Yeah.
Keeping
good
you
motivation.
I think that, I have been doing it a long time. I've been a professional writer since 1988, so that's a long time. And so it may look like I'm doing a lot at once, but it's been spread out over a period of time. But then also just the idea that I've gotten the opportunity to do what I've gotten to do. I don't want to miss that opportunity. I've definitely feel very lucky that I get to do what I do. And so I don't want to miss that opportunity or ever take it for granted. I'm always trying to do new things. So.
Yeah, I very much appreciate all that you do for sci-fi.
Oh,
So
thanks, Katie.
thank you for being a part of that world.
Oh, yeah, no, thank the sci-fi world for having me. This is,
And speaking of your time, we don't want to take up too much.
no, it's fine.
of it,
Wait, did
'cause-
you no more questions about the comics? I just want to make sure before we've covered it all. No, nothing.
Do you have a favorite of the comics you've
Oh,
written?
that's a good question. I did like that story of the, that they go down to the planet. Ed and Kelly go down to the planet that's going to remove itself from the universe.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Launch day part. That to me was a cool thing, and it's actually something that I'd already come up with. There's a version of it actually in my Picard autobiography, but I fleshed it out a little bit more here, and I think it's more interesting in the comic than it was in there. I just liked that idea of like setting up something you think it's the Death Star, and then that's obviously a Star Wars reference, but then it isn't, and something else. And I don't know, it was a fun way to sort of comment on society, I thought.
Dark ending on that one too.
Very dark.
Yeah.
Very good twist, dark ending on there. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't get them all the time, but when they hit hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is the in New Beginnings, there's the Burton.
Yes. Oh, right.
Is that a connection to LeVar Burton?
It is not.
It is not.
a reference to a British explorer by the name of Richard Francis Burton, who discovered or is believed to have discovered the source of the Nile River.
Okay.
And he was a kind of a very colorful character himself. But I liked that idea of referencing kind of an explorer. There's a great movie. It's kind of forgotten. I think kind of hard to find, but I really enjoyed it. It's called Mountains of the Moon.
Okay.
And the actor Patrick Bergin plays this explorer, and it's a really just tough story of like what exploration was like in the 19th century, and so that was more of what the reference was. You might want to look at in that episode. You might want to look in Lieutenant Hodges in that episode. May have been based on a famous person. Not the name, but the face.
Okay.
I feel like I need to go back through and like start detective work.
Fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, looking for Easter eggs. So
I'm gonna be dragging a comb across the desert like in Spaceballs. Just
I'll have like one of those walls, and I'll have all these things tied together. And
most of the characters, I was treating it like we were guest casting, like that you were. So I would, but from a legal point of view, I can't actually say who I was if they're still alive. Now, Yaphet Kotto has passed away, so it's okay. So those are the comic book company never wanted me to say publicly who I based it on. So.
I mean, from a perspective of writing, it gives you the ability to do a dream cast if you ever wanted to.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I was like, we'll put him in. I mean, and I put, Hodges is somebody who's much older now than he is in the comic. Like, it's not even a real casting, but it's So.
I know we could go through the Easter eggs for a while, I'm sure, but Yeah, but we'll start to wrap things up here, and we can let you get back to your life. And
No, thanks.
listeners can't see this either, but I just want to say that I appreciate some of the things I'm seeing in the background of your office there.
All right. So they couldn't see when I was holding up.
No, but they'll hear all that.
Right.
So you're representing both of my favorite fandoms in your office right now, because you got the Enterprise over there on the wall. And
right
then you got
there.
the Batman cowl behind you, and I'm a
Batman
massive
cowl.
Batman fan.
I think there's an Orville right next to the Batman cowl. On top of my finger.
I think, yep, that's the back end of it, right?
And then right here above this finger is In Search Of, which was Leonard Nimoy's documentary series.
Oh, wow.
Which was from my childhood. Again,
yeah.
There was no sci-fi, but Leonard Nimoy would do this documentary series, so you listen to that. And then right above that is the DVD set of $6 Million Man.
I have not seen that. But
never seen that. It's not really worth it.
Okay. Sometimes they don't hold up so well.
Oh my God, no! Again, it speaks to the dearth of like what we had as kids.
To
watch. It was like, this is as close as we get to a superhero show. We're going to watch it. It wasn't good, but we watched it.
Well, that feels like the superhero genre now. Like, throw a rock and you're going to hit an amazing superhero movie or TV show. But when I was growing up, it was like we were just waiting for something. Yeah,
they really, I mean, you know, the DC shows on the CW, the Marvel shows, the movie. It's crazy. It's too much to keep up. I can't.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
But it's great. It's great.
It is. I'm starting a whole other conversation now, though. But I just want to say thank you, especially since we had those tech issues in the first one. Your time is precious, and the fact that you would come back to spend it with us, I'm so eternally grateful for.
Well,
I know Katie is too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking time, and I'm really looking forward to the next upcoming month.
Oh my God, yeah.
Season 3. Well, I'll come back if you want in season 3.
Oh, anytime.
Yes.
Anytime.
All right, good. Well, take care, guys.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.